What makes the social sciences a science is that we base our thinking on data. And the data that we gather is about the social world. So we're the social sciences. Whereas the hard sciences are gathering different sorts of data. And the data that students in college can get, that anyone can use really, there are two sorts of data. They're called primary and secondary. And primary data is when you do the research yourself. Like if I sent my students out and told them to go across campus with a survey and pick 10 students, 5 men, 5 women, and ask each of them where they think San Diego gets its water, then my students would be doing primary research. They would be gathering their own data, and they could come back then and they could look at that and say, well, across 10 students, how many got the right answer? How many knew? How many women knew? How many men knew? And if they got information about the age of the students or what year they were in college, they could say, well, seniors tended to know more, or freshmen knew less, or women knew more, or men knew more. So then they can analyze, that's primary data. So that's one source of data. Now, in my classes, we don't usually have the opportunity to get primary data, so what we're doing is we're using data that other people have gotten, and that's called secondary data. So my students do a lot of library research, and that library research isn't necessarily done in the library anymore, it's done on their computers. But we work very closely with the librarians, and we teach students how to access databases of journal articles written by academics who have gone out and gathered the data. And so when they're writing a paper, whether it's a paper on the Colorado River Delta or a paper on the transition to democracy in Mexico, it's not something that they know, so they have to learn about it, and the way they learn about it is reading what other people have researched and written about. And so we don't use magazine articles. We use sources that we feel are reputable in terms of the quality of the data that they have. And data doesn't have to mean numbers. It can mean the data is an article by a foreign policy analyst writing his impressions of transition to democracy in Mexico. And if he's someone who has worked on Mexico for 30 years, then his impressions are important, and they constitute data. And so in the social sciences, we gather information and then we try to digest it and reflect on it. And that's what we're doing in our papers.